Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's all fantastic. Everything here is great. In 2020, I culled my collection of over 400 games down to about 75. Today we're going to talk about one of the games that stayed, and that is Titan the Arena. Now, this game stayed in my collection for a couple of reasons. One, it's a really good game, and two, it has a little bit of a story behind it that amuses me. So I thought I would stick with the tradition. This week we've so far talked about games you probably don't own, have never heard of, or can't find. This is another one of those games, except I think that this game has had a fairly recent reprint. I'm not positive about that. There's also a board game that is similar but different. This is a better game than the board game. This is a card game. The story behind this game is I was in the Marine Corps in 1997. I was stationed somewhere in North Carolina for MCT training, and I went to the store and saw this game on the shelf and went, whoa, I thought Avalon Hill was no longer making games. Like, they hadn't done much. They were going out of business. I think Hasbro was buying them. When I saw this on the shelf, I bought it because I loved Avalon Hill for many, many years. And I never got to play it. I told my friend about it. Hey, I got this new game from Avalon Hill. He said, okay. And, he's lived back here. I didn't see him for a few years. I came back home a few years later, and he was like, dude, I got this new game. You got to try it. It's really amazing. And he pulls out Titan the Arena. And so I was like, dude, I told you about this game years ago. I've had it in my collection for all these years. So Titan the Arena is a very simple game. And I think that is going to kind of be a theme for the rest of this week. Not only are we talking about games you probably have never heard of or seen, because I do happen to have a fairly vintage collection, these are also very simple games, and they're part of the reason why I love them is their simplicity, is their complexity through simplicity, which is something I've attempted to achieve for years as a designer. The game works like this. We have a row of these creatures. We have dragons and rangers and cyclops and unicorns, all these different titans, and they're out in a row. And every player has betting chips and a hand of strength cards. And strength cards match up to those creatures. For instance, there's a ranger from 9 and 10. I believe they go from 1 to 10. Could be wrong about that. It's been a long time since I've played this game. But on your turn, you're allowed to bid on a creature and play a card. You play a card on any creature, and if you are the backer of that creature, meaning that you have the leading bid in that creature, you can activate its power. So each creature has some sort of power, such as backer draws 3 cards after playing the ranger, so he lets you draw up 3 cards. You can also make secret bids. So you can put 1 card from your hand face down and put a bid on it. That means you're bidding on that creature, but nobody gets to see what it is. And what's going to happen is, at the start of the game, there's going to be 8 of these guys out. I think it's 8. And we're going to put cards on each of them. I don't know where the troll is, whatever. Actually, the ranger goes over here, the warlock goes here. And on your turn, when you put a card on it, you can you're covering up whatever's there. So if I didn't want the warlock to live, if I'm not betting on the warlock and I don't want him to survive, I can cover up his 7, put a 2 on it. Now he's the weakest creature. Once everybody has cards on them, the round ends, and whoever the weakest creature is dies. Period. So we're going to kill a bunch of these things throughout the game, meaning that your secret bid might become invalid, or all the bids that you have out there are also invalid. It's a very simple game. I believe there's 4 rounds. I think that I might be wrong about that. There's a number of rounds that we play through, killing off creatures, killing off creatures, killing off creatures. Then we reveal our bids, and whoever has the most bids wins. It's a very simple game, but it's also super engaging. This was my group's probably favorite for a very long time. We played this exclusively. Like, seriously, we would have entire game nights where all we played was Titan the Arena. And like I said earlier, it's one of those games that it's so simple. You're bidding, you're playing a card, you're activating the ability if you're a backer in that Titan, and that's it. That's your turn. You draw cards. You can discard cards for dead Titans, so if say the Hydra dies, you can chuck Hydra cards at the end of your turn, up to 3 of those, and you're drawing back up. So there's a little bit of hand management. You're trying to time the play. So if I want the Warlock to die, maybe I don't want people to know that. So I have the 9 in my hand. I might play the 9, holding on to this 2 for a while, hoping that nobody realizes that I'm going to try to kill the Warlock. I played the 9. People think, oh, Chevee's backing the Warlock. I'm going to go ahead and bid on it because I think it's going to survive the round. And then, they've wasted their bid. You only have a limited number of bids. So they've wasted their bid, and then later on I try to kill the Warlock. And now they have to try to keep the Warlock alive. Maybe they bid because they can. Maybe they have the 8 in their hand. So they're like, I'm going to keep the Warlock alive. That's no big deal. And so there's this whole hand management, hidden information, screw your neighbor type thing going on. But there's also a bit of like, hey, I want the Hydra to live. So does whoever's playing black. And so we're going to, okay, let's try to keep that thing alive. So I'm going to try to buddy up with people. Might try to buddy up with everybody on at least one of their creatures to try to get as many of my creatures as I can into the final rounds, or the, where I'm going to score the most. Obviously, if a creature dies, you lose your bid, by the way. Duh. I'm going to try to keep my creatures alive until the end of the game so that, I can get points. And to do that, I'm going to have to pair up with people. And that all happens kind of organically based on the cards that I have in my hand, based on the way that I, you can interact with other people. You can, hey, let's try to keep this thing alive. Let's try to kill that thing. Okay, whatever. I found that our group didn't do a whole lot of that. I think the rulebook even kind of mentions, like, you should try to, make plans with other players. We didn't do a whole lot of that because it's not really that necessary in the game. I mean, you're kind of driven by the cards in your hand. You're pretty limited, and so you can't just bluff your way through the game. You're not going to be able to say, hey buddy, let's keep the Ranger alive, and you have no Ranger cards in your hand. You're going to have to do your part, right? And if you don't, you're wasting your bids, which is a valid strategy, but it's also probably a losing strategy. Again, simple game, like very, very simple. And it was one of those things that we could just pull out and play kind of anywhere, just need a little bit of table space and have a really good game session. And like I said, we would often play this back to back. We would just play, a few hours of Titan and hang out. And I think that's the other part. A lot of these games, you got to remember, this was like the 90s. There were not the flood of Euro-style gaming had not come to America yet. So there were strategy games, intense strategy games, but there wasn't a whole lot of the Euro-y strategy games that kind of made simple mechanics into tough decisions. These were those games. Like the games that I'm talking about this week were those games. And so they offered a good amount of strategy, but they also offered a lot of social time. Like just chilling with friends, playing these types of games. I think that's why I love them so much and why they've sat on my shelf for so long. Because I enjoy spending time with my friends. I also enjoy playing games. And sometimes I don't want to sit down to a game of Terraforming Mars where I have to think for 3 hours straight. I want to be able to play a game that's like, oh, cool, let's do this, and we chat about it, and we have a good time together. And that's what this is. This was a very social game for us, and we really enjoyed playing it a lot. So that is Titan the Arena. I don't know if it's available anymore. I don't know if you can find a copy somewhere. If you can, let me know. This copy is old and beaten up, and I didn't even realize that the tokens were starting to get discolored. So it's a time for a refresh if I can find one. But I'll keep this copy around just because of the sentimentality. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is libation. It is a noun meaning an alcoholic beverage consumed at social gatherings, parties, and celebrations. With the libations flowing freely, each member of the winning team felt compelled to make a drunken speech. Libation. L-I-B-A-T-I-O-N. That's one of those words that I feel like everybody already knows that word, right? Is that not a common knowledge word? Is that really something that you have to know to sound smart?